Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Public Utilities regular session meeting for September 2023. All right. Welcome everybody who's here in person. If you're viewing online, listening to the audio as well. Reminder that all this entire meeting is recorded on audio and video. As always, there is a public comment section. If you are in the room, please use the sign-up sheet over here at the executive assistance desk. If you're on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature on the app. Each member of the public wishing to speak shall provide their name and address, direct comments to the board only, and have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak. Reminder that all comments are public. Board cautions any visitor not disclose any confidential account information or any information about an account that is not in their name. Staff will not be able to provide individual account information or history in an open meeting for confidentiality reasons. Members of the public may also call or email BPU with any questions or concerns. Tonight's agenda and presentations may be found on the BPU website on the board meetings tab. Reminder, this is a business meeting of the board of directors, and we will conduct this meeting accordingly. The following rules apply to this meeting. Every person in this room will act respectfully toward one another. Personal attacks and accusations toward any person will not be tolerated. Please state your specific issue or question to the board only. Attendees shall refrain from side discussions or individual commentary that interferes with speakers or other attendees at this meeting. If side discussions are necessary, please take them outside of the boardroom. If any of the above rules are breached during this meeting, the individual breaching those is subject to removal from the boardroom. I am Rose Mulvaney Henry, member at large, position 3, and current board president. Other members of our board and staff include Bill Johnson, the general manager, David Haley, member at large, position 2, Tom Groneman, 2nd district and current board vice president, Bob Mylan, 1st district and current board secretary, Jeff Bryant, 3rd district, Mary Gonzalez, member at large, position 1, and Angela Lawson, the acting chief counsel. Remind everyone to please put your phones on silent. Also a reminder that the microphones are throughout the room. They are very sensitive. They can pick up and record comments from anywhere in the room. Before we begin our meeting, please rise and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Mylan.
Here.
Mulvaney Henry.
Here.
Bryant.
Here.
Gonzalez.
Here.
Groneman.
Here.
Haley.
Present.
Do I have a quorum?
Yes, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Before I ask for a motion to approve tonight's agenda, I'll ask if there are any corrections or edits that need to be made. Hearing none.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion to approve tonight's agenda has been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Mylan.
Aye.
Mulvaney Henry.
Aye.
Bryant.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Groneman.
Aye.
Haley.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Before I entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the work session of September 6, 2023, I'll ask if there are any corrections or edits that need to be made. Hearing none.
This is Jeff. Move to approve.
Second. Motion to approve the minutes of the work session of September 6, 2023 has been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Mylan.
Aye.
Mulvaney Henry.
Aye.
Bryant.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Groneman.
Aye.
Haley.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Before I ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the regular session of September 6th, 2023, I'll ask if there are any corrections or edits that need to be made. Hearing none.
Move to approve the minutes of the regular session.
Second.
Motion to approve the minutes of the regular session of September 6, 2023 has been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Mylan,
Aye.
Mulvaney Henry,
Aye.
Bryant,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Groneman,
Aye.
Haley.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Madam President. Chris, is there anyone? No. Rob, is there anyone online raising their hand and requesting to speak?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Nobody's requesting to speak, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next section, General Manager, staff reports. First on the agenda is a quarterly water update. So Steve, I'll look to you to who's gonna present.
Marshall.
Okay,
So tonight we are going to have Marshall Robinette, who's the Director of Water Distribution, and Steve Nerschel, who is the Director at the Nearman Water Treatment Plant. Will give their updates, their annual updates they give the board.
Okay.
Hello, so I'm Marshall Robinette. I'm the Director of Water Distribution. I want to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to speak on Water Distribution's behalf. Again, Steve Nersch will be speaking for water production after me. Next slide. Next slide. So a brief recap of 2023 for water distribution. Currently, year to date, we're at 291 main leaks. That puts us about 6% below the 5-year average and 14% below the 10-year average. Some of the, sorry about that. Some of the other commonly performed work we do is fire hydrant, valve, and service replacement repair. Everybody can see the numbers where we're at for the year to date. One of the things I want to focus on is our system improvement work orders that we completed this year. Right now, we're at 126. These types of jobs include main replacement, fire hydrant installation, really anything that's targeted to improving our system and just bettering it.
How does that compare to a normal year?
This year we're up than the last 2 years. So we're probably usually averaging about 90 year to date. So we're up quite a bit. Next slide.
so March, a follow-up for me too. So you completed that many. How many outstanding tickets do you still have, if you have that?
How many outstanding tickets? One of the things I'll talk about is a remaining project that we have going on Hollingsworth. With that job, it probably includes a total of 10 work orders, all combined as part of a bigger project. So in total, I would say probably around 20.
Okay.
20 open. Next slide. So some of the things that we do to trend downward and stay below our 5 and 10-year average is increasing the longevity of our infrastructure. One of the most important things we do, we install sacrificial anodes. They're essentially just a magnesium core bedded in gypsum. And what those do, it's a more noble metal, and it draws a stray current from the soil away from the metallic pipe. Every metallic pipe is susceptible to corrosion. So they're wired directly to the main, and they just, again, provide themselves a sacrificial anode to prevent corrosion on the water main. Another thing we do, we install polywrap. Is a very simple procedure. It's a polyethylene encasement, and it serves as a barrier between the corrosive soil and the metallic main. In fact, in the picture to the left, you can see a repair that we conducted. Repair is actually complete, polywrap taped throughout the length of pipe. And if you look below the main, you can see actually the anode bag that's installed and wired to the main. In addition to that, really some of the repair practices that we've taken on probably since probably the early 2000s. Essentially, if we expose a water main and we see significant amount of corrosion, we go ahead and cut that entire length of main out, and we replace with new for the entire distance of the excavation. So those are all things that we do to try to prolong the life of our pipe. one of the more significant things we do is main replacement. We all know that we near an end of useful life for infrastructure. So main replacement really helps us kind of bring those numbers down for our main leaks and keep us trending in the right direction. Next slide. So this here, it kind of just shows our trends since 2009 to 2023. Can't see early 2000s, about 2002, we started installing Polywrap, which is the polyethylene encasement. And then about 2006, 2007, we started installing the sacrificial anodes. Obviously, there's some years, 2012, 2018, where we had a pretty significant increase in main breaks. It's not necessarily uncommon with weather-related events, kind of depends on what your usage is. But the overall goal is to see a downward trend, which is pretty obvious is happening. Actually, probably about 2014, I think 2014, 2015 is when we began our first area projects, which was small diameter main replacement, which we had a lot of leaks on. And so we targeted those really hard to kind of take our leaks down. So it's been successful, kind of shows it in the numbers and things that we continue to bring that down. Talking about main replacement projects, this year on Hutton Road, we replaced 1,600 feet of 12-inch ductile iron pipe. Ductile iron pipe is again susceptible to corrosion. We determined this particular pipe has outlived its performance, and actually replacing this, we took out about 12 leaks. So took out a problem main there. On Hollingsworth Road, we also replaced about 2,000 feet of 4-inch pipe, and we installed 12-inch PVC. Our purpose in doing this is really just to ensure that we can meet our demand in the western portion of our territory. One of the projects I spoke about earlier, where we have remaining work orders, is actually in addition to this main replacement project on Hollingsworth. We'll do it about another 2,000 feet. In completing that, we'll have a 12-inch main running from Hutton Road to K7 on Hollingsworth. So. Another thing we've seen over the past several years is an increase in our transmission main work. As you can see here, a lot of these are main leaks. We had about 8 projects this year, many of them main leaks. Some of them are betterment projects, so that's really kind of some of the things we're going to start focusing on is transmission main inspection and repairs. Particularly here, 18th Street and Kansas Avenue, we had a project where our crews in-house replaced 3 16-inch valves. They also abandoned 2 16-inch valves that were inoperable and unnecessary in our system. Of course, in doing that, they had to reconnect the 30-inch and 16-inch mains. And I've got some pictures of various projects, 55th and State, and then 14th and Douglas, and some upcoming slides. So the picture on the left is 30th Street in Cheyenne. That was a 30-inch main leak. We repaired the leak in-house, and you can see the leak was repaired. It's poly-wrapped, and on the right side of the main there, you can see the anode bag. Another thing I want to point out is in the perimeter of that picture is a trench box. It's used for safety measures to prevent the trench from collapsing. So I really like to take this opportunity to thank the safety team's help with just really increasing our safety culture, and it's obviously paid off, and our guys are using that to the best advantage. So and then the picture on the right is taken at 55th and State Avenue. It's 36-inch valve that was inoperable. We excavated with hopes of trying to repair that operator, but it was not repairable. We moved to cut it out, and cutting it out, we can see that this is a 36-inch butterfly valve that's partially closed. So just examples. This here is the project I talked about, 18th Street and Kansas Avenue. These pictures really just kind of show the scale and the magnitude of the job. That's a 30-inch main, and 16-inch mains are the smaller ones you see throughout the picture. And so that area is really kind of riddled with aging older infrastructure. So we actually had a lot of a lot of conflicts, sewers and duct banks that were not claimed by anybody. So we had some obstacles to work around. Really large scale project. The crews worked all day throughout the night to get everything tied back in, get the water restored. We also had a lot of help from the carpenters in the light side with the traffic signal loops, restoring the concrete. So it really was a joint effort, and it was a good project to see everybody collaborating on, and a lot of teamwork shown there. This is a picture of 14th and Douglas Argentine Pump Station. Just an example of some of the valve replacement and pipe work that's gone into the Argentine reservoir in preparation for that to be put in service. As you can see, we installed several valves, and just like I said, just an example of some of the work that's been done. So we talk about a lot of the work that I've talked about is reactionary in nature. And one of the things we're driving towards is being proactive. With that, in late 2022, we conducted a pipe diver inspection on our 30-inch concrete main that runs through Argentine. Roughly starts at 18th and Metropolitan and goes to 55th and Clam. Slide. So the graphic here on the left just shows how the tool flows through the water main. It's about a 6-foot long tool. It's got some tentacles, for lack of a better word, that kind of probe out. What they do, they emit a current through the pre-stress wiring in the concrete main, looking for continuity. If there's a break in continuity, it's an indication that there could be a potential wire break. Reason that's important is because the pre-stress wiring on the concrete main is really there for the structural integrity of the pipe. So anytime you see a breakage, there's potential for leaks. So next slide. So like I said, we inspected this main once before. The initial inspection was, it was in 2016. At that time, it was reported that we had about 16 lengths of pipe that were distressed. Due to advances in technology during this last reinspection, we were able to reclassify those as not distressed. So some great news there. However, we did find one length of pipe that was newly identified as distressed. So we'll work to see what needs to be done there. So the first table here really just has some identifying information, start and stop point of the pipe diver inspection, but we went over about a little over 3 miles that we inspected this concrete main. Second table again has some identifying information, but really what I want to focus on are these last 3 boxes. They classify, really through the inspection, they classify the results as high probability of failure to medium to high probability of failure. So we fall on that low probability with 1 wire wrap broken. So that gives us a sense of direction of where we need. And also this tool has cameras, so you can take get an internal visual of your pipe, and it takes GPS. So we're able to use that, determine where this wire wrap was broken. We can excavate and do some investigation, see if we need to do any repairs there. Next slide. Here, just some pictures of the insertion of the pipe diver. I know it's very difficult to see, but if you look at the middle picture, the center picture there, you can actually see it's an open 16-inch valve. And if you look closely, you can kind of see the yellow probes that are inserted there. That pipe diver is neutrally buoyant, and it's ready to be sent on down the line. So once it's inserted, we install some valves, some fittings, so we can monitor the pressure of the flow to ensure that it's moving at the right speed and getting where we need it to go. Next slide. So I know everybody is familiar with the revisions to the lead and copper rule. First part of that was taking a survey and inventory of all of our service material in our system. We began with an internal audit where we really scoured through historical documents throughout the office. We were actually very successful in that. However, in even doing that, we had about 14,500 that we had to do field visits on to confirm the service material. Some of the methods of verification are simply visual inspection of the meter box, which you see in that picture, a visual inspection of internal plumbing, and hydrovac excavation, which is the most intrusive. So yeah, we started with 14,500 and began in May, and right now we're down to a little under 1,000 that we need to still collect data on. Yep, go ahead. Thank you. Next slide. Another one of the cool things we're able to do this year, we were able to take one of our crews to the AWWA KWEA joint conference. They competed in an event that's called Hydrant Hysteria, where they compete against neighboring utilities and see who really can assemble a hydrant the fastest. So it's a really neat event, gives them a great opportunity to network with surrounding utilities. But even above that, they're able to attend sessions, training sessions throughout the days that they're there. So a lot of value in doing that. In fact, you can see Brandon Sisk is one of our engineers here at BPU. So he's president of the Hydrant Hysteria program. So that was a really neat event for us. Next slide. I really want to thank all of our hard work and efforts. We've had a lot of positive praise from customers this year. You know, we work our hardest to work safely, efficiently, and really meet the customer service needs that they expect. We've had several employees get recognized, some of our supervisors. We actually have a couple of distribution supervisors here, so I want to take the opportunity to really thank everybody for their efforts, hard work, and everything they put into it. And lastly, an update on our grant funding. So we've submitted applications that have been approved. We're in the final stage of design for our first portion of this project. So those will be submitted to KDHE for approval soon, and we'll be bidding the job sometime around November. Once the bid process is finished and we receive approval from KDHE, we'll start moving forward with some small diameter main replacements, problem main replacements, and really do what we can to drive those numbers down. And with all that, we certainly can't do it without the help of our water engineering group, who helps us with all of our design, all of our transmission main projects, and then water processing's help too. They're really essential to our functions when we're working on transmission mains. So with that, that's all I've got. If anyone has any questions.
Thanks, Marshall. Any of the board members have any questions?
So I didn't get when we started using the polywrap.
Polywrap was about 2002.
Okay.
And like I said, it kind of provides a barrier between the corrosive soil. Doesn't necessarily add life to pipe that's already installed, but it definitely prolongs pipe when you put it in there. So,
That's a hard work.
I'm sorry.
Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. Appreciate your guys' time.
Go ahead, David.
And thank you, Echo, thank you for the hard work. So we're completely lead free. They do periodic lead. I mean, you did say that, but
Yeah.
we have reached our goals. So we're completely, I mean, the testing is periodic, but along all the lines that we've done now, we
Yeah,
got 100% abatement, 100% replacement.
we have not found any lead services. Steve does speak more to the compliance standard as far as testing, which we are doing this year. So he's got some more information on that. But yeah, we've not found any lead service lines in our system.
I remember we had a major problem. Well, it's been 20 years, but you know, I'm glad that we were still ranked differently. So I'm very glad to hear
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Some utilities are in a pretty unfortunate position, so we're very fortunate. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
all right, thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you guys for allowing me to come and present tonight. Again, my name's Steve Nerschel. I'm Director of Water Production. And again, it's always good to just be able to share what we're doing. So go ahead. So first, I thought I'd start out just to show kind of where we are for the year in pumpage comparison. This is something that we have internal that we use just to kind of see where we are year to date. So we look at a snapshot of 21, 22, 23. And then we kind of just do a difference over in that far column. So you can see the year we started out a little sluggish on production. We January, February, March, and May, we were kind of down compared to last year. But June, we kind of started to pick up, and you can see that red kind of trend going down. And then here we are in August. You can see we're down to about 3.5%. I really do think that, you know, based on the numbers we're seeing in September, we'll probably be close to in the black. So, I mean, that's always good to just see where we are. Again, our average really hasn't changed. We're still pumping about 31 million gallons as our average per day. Again, this year during July, we did see some some mid 40s.
And actually, we saw a couple 40s even in August. So, but I mean, you can anticipate that with as hot and dry as it's been this summer. I would have thought during that really hot spell, we would have maybe seen a little bit more. But again, we got a little bit of rain, and rain really does it does change the way the treatment plant runs. So go ahead, next slide. So here I wanted to talk about chemical prices, just to kind of give you an idea of what we've experienced. So this is like looking at it in a 10-year time frame. The yellow one up there is chlorine, and you can kind of see on average we utilize about 730,000 pounds of chlorine a year. And if you look back at 2013, you can see all the way up to about 21, we really weren't. Chlorine wasn't fluctuating much. It stayed about the same. It was very, pretty common to have plenty out there in the supply chain. But if you look at what happened about 2022, you can see the price went from 32 cents to 71 cents, and that really that was a big game changer because our prices are going up, and so we're scrambling to try, and it's not like you can just change suppliers. So anyway, and then 23, we saw 79 cents a pound, and that's where we're locked at now. We'll be bidding that out next year. I do anticipate to see that come down some, and I follow that next number down, which is caustic. If you know anything about the manufacturing of chlorine, through the process, the electrode they put in there, you get chlorine on one side, you get caustic on the other. So you can see from 2022, the caustic price went from 17 cents to our new annual bid of 13 cents. So 4 cents may not sound like a lot, but when you're looking at 1 million pounds, it's a lot. So it adds up over time. So all of the ones that are highlighted there are the chemicals that we've bid this last year, and you can kind of just look at the trends yourself. But I will point out one other that's not highlighted, and that's the second one from the bottom, and that's phosphoric acid. So when you talk about lead and copper, that is a key chemical to prevent lead copper in your piping distribution. It's a corrosion inhibitor. So that's what kind of protects that lining of the interior of the pipe. But you can see what the price has done. So 2013, you can see is at 28 cents. And look at it now, $1.13. So a lot of that's demand. And so a lot of utilities, because of the new lead copper rules that are coming out, most utilities are going to have to, start feeding some type of corrosion inhibitor. So I anticipate that's part of the problem and why we're seeing that price increase fluctuate so much. But there is other variables. It is a farm. And one big thing about phosphoric acid is it's a food grade. So anything that's food grade related, you're going to pay a little bit more. So go ahead, next slide. So I'm going to go on a few pictures here about the plant. So some of the things that we have going on in the plant, everybody thinks, oh, the plant's, new. It's 23 years old. And, it's our goal to keep it looking new. But so we've been replacing some of our own yard hydrants. That picture on the left, those are 2-inch yard hydrants. And it was kind of, as we started to, we were seeing some water loss through our meters, and, they didn't really appear that much, but over time they were adding up. And so what we found is some of those yard hydrants were leaking. They were leaking underground. It's a 2-inch pipe. It's not something, they're pretty deep. They're probably about 5 or 6 feet. So it's not something that you would have saw. They were just small leaks. But we started changing some of them out. We got numerous runs around the plant, and those are, the operators use those for cleaning out our basins. The picture on the right is our chemical valves. So our chemical valves are critical. These are PVC lines, and they are at the front of our basin. And so anytime we have to do a basin outage, we have to isolate these valves, and we try to change them out about every 5 years. It's a pretty expensive. That doesn't look like that much, but that's only one vault. So one of those, usually we'll try to do 2 vaults at a time during an outage, but that's about a $7,000 cost just to change all that out. But they're critical because they allow us to isolate those basins. They allow us to move chemical feed points when we need to. So we did some of those in the spring. We have the west side our west basin outage That's going to take place in October, and we'll be changing those out as well. Next slide. So the picture on the left here is our old UPS. So our UPS is an uninterruptible power source. Basically, it's a battery bank that's made up to give you power during a power loss. That piece of equipment was critical to our operations. It's what powered all of our servers, our control system. So we got 13 years out of it. That I looked back and we spent about $9,000 on that in 2013. We had to install a new one because it failed in February. And we were very fortunate to be able to get that pretty quick because electronic supply chain is really, we're seeing things that are a year out. And some of them are even further. So we were very fortunate to get this. It's a powerful unit. It looks short, and it is. It's kind of how compact it is, but it has the same horsepower as the other one does, and it's actually expandable. We put new isolation switches in, but again, hopefully this will last another 10 years like the other one did, but I can't stress about how important that piece of equipment is to our plant. So next slide. Okay, so here on the left, you're looking at a booster pump. A lot of people don't know, but you need water to make water. So a lot of our chemical feed systems operate off water pressure. And a lot of times when the power plant's doing certain functions in their power at the power plant, we may lose water pressure or it dips. And that throws our chlorine feed systems off and some of our carrier water systems off. So we need to maintain roughly about 120 to 130 PSI at the plant all the time. So these booster pumps make up that pressure loss when we see them. They kick on automatically based on a flow or a pressure set point. And so this year we took the time to rebuild both our big booster pumps. And in addition to that, while we did that, we also changed out our MCC breakers. So they used to have old combination starters in there, and I'll show you a picture of that later. I was trying to save space, but you can see this as a new soft starter. And, and I'll talk more about the soft starter technology when we get there, but our guys did all this this year, and, we operate these things monthly to test them. So again, they're another critical component to our treatment plant. Next slide. What you're looking at here is our high service pump 1. This is a pretty usable pump that we use to make up water in our distribution. So the pump was good, but the motor failed. We had bearings fail on it. And so again, these things they don't have like an indefinite lifespan. They wear out. So we had to replace the bearings in it. We shipped these out and had it repaired, and it's back in service. And again, hopefully we can get pretty good runtime out of it. But each time we've just sent one out today, another motor from our collector well. So these are things that, we're starting to see over time. We're seeing these big assets starting to see they're not premature. They're just starting to come to the end of their life. Bearings wear out, they start pitting, making noise. And the last thing you want to happen is a catastrophic failure. So for example, this pump, I think, was about $16,000 to repair it, but the price to buy that new would be over $100,000. So again, we're doing this as not really somewhat of a preventative, but also a corrective. Go ahead. Okay, so on the left here, this is a filter project we've been doing this year, and this is all internal. What you're looking at on the left side is our filter console. This is what an operator would go out to wash a filter. Many of our filters consoles are outdated. They're 23 years old. Technology does the same controllers that were made then are obsolete. So what we did is we had to go out and find some new controllers and install them. So that's what you're looking at. That console is used anytime we have like major SCADA issues or power interruptions or maybe some big storms coming through the area. We'll switch our filters to manual just to prevent an upset. The filters are super critical, and there's a lot of regulatory that goes on with those. So again, what we do is we put all new controllers in there. We was able to get 2 of them completed. We still got 4 more to go. The picture on the right is is actually one side of a filter basin. And Mary, you probably remember these, but they tend to get stained. They would, so over time they stain with iron and manganese, and they start to look kind of, you know, pretty dark. You wouldn't even be able to see those launders that are in there. So they make some pretty good cleaning products out there. And one of them we're using right now. It is pricey, but not only does it clean that, it also cleans the media itself. And we're hopeful to do some productivity readings. So we'll take a sample of before, a sample after the cleaning, and then we can correlate that with the productivity time. So for example, if we noticed that we were getting a little bit shorter filter runs, maybe 55 hours. So if we can get that to 65, 70 hours, it was money well spent, because we're not having to wash those filters as much. And really, you know, we're just taking care of that media so it doesn't prematurely fail over time. Next slide. So earlier I talked about soft starters. So the picture on the right, the left is an old combination starter. And actually it's a pretty good size starter. That's a combination 6 on the top with 2 5s, has an auto transformer in the bottom. These things are high maintenance. That equipment that's old, that's 23-year-old technology. When you call for the big blower to run, it hits it with power, a super punch across the line. You know, over time, it's kind of hard on the motor, but the contacts wear out in these things. So we're having to do maintenance about 4 times a year and the prices have gotten really expensive on these combination starters. For example, that top one, that number 6 on the very top there, I don't have a pointer, but on the left side, that thing's about $75,000. So thought, you know what, we need to come up with something better for the future. So the picture on the right is the new reduced voltage starters, soft starters, and you can see it's all electronic. These things run about 25, 26,000 with all the extra stuff, you know, you're looking at about 30. So I look at it as a big cost saving, and also there's really not much maintenance to do on it. You're not worrying about the contacts, having to refile them and clean them, and just all the work that goes in with a combination starter. So we're looking at all of our larger loads and trying to come up with ways to go in and install these reduced voltage starters, because the price has really come down on them. Next slide. Okay, this is an aerial view. I know it's hard to see. You know, it's been since 2015 since we last did any really major road repairs, and we were really needing it. As you can imagine, we got concrete trucks that roll in every day with chemicals, so we have a lot of truck traffic. And you know, it's important to keep the plant up and for aesthetic purposes, but just you know, you don't want to run through potholes. And I mean, the roads, once they decay, they get to a point that, you know, then they all have to be replaced. So we were able to do about 250 feet of curb replacement. We got about that much still to go, but we got a lot done. We got the asphalt resealed in the pink areas. What you're looking at around the back of the plant, we still have to do. We're probably going to be looking at a little bit more asphalt replacement in the back. And then probably in the near future, we'll be looking at a lot of concrete too. So some of those areas that kind of look gray, those are concrete. So those will have to be repoured. Next slide. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit real quick about district metering. District metering is something that we all work together on. This is engineering, this is distribution, and the water production team. So a lot of our electrical engineer has really been, you know, looking at all these different types of meters. And as you can see, we've had to be creative. A lot of these places that we put these meters in, where we're looking for unaccounted for water, we don't have a power source there. We don't really have no way to make something work in an automatic, you know, where it can feed into our SCADA system live. So we've been innovative. We've done solar panels with batteries. We're actually installing a windmill right now, a small one to power these things. So we've got several of these solar panels set up at Tonganoxie. but some of our wholesale customers, and that's something that we've been lacking. So we only have 1 meter, really, actually 2 meters in our wholesale that we can kind of see live stream. We can get data, but it's old data. And when we're operating the plant, you know, if we want to see a lot of that stuff, we want to see it live. I mean, this is 2023, so there's ways to do it. And, you know, we're making it happen. So I'm really happy with the guys, our distribution folks that help us, and engineering. Like I said, this is a coordinated effort to really look for making sure that we're getting, you know, accurate meter reads on all of our water. Next slide. Okay, so we all like graphs, right? So this metric here is basically looking at, you know, this year we've done to date about 380 work orders. I think we probably have had a few more, but these are the ones that we're capturing. And so basically what you're seeing here is about 50-50 of it's preventative maintenance versus corrective maintenance. Well, we would really, I mean, it just shows that we've kind of got a little bit behind, and some of that's due to staffing and reasons, but we're catching up there. So we really want to see that predictive maintenance pie fill in more. I mean, ideally, we'd like to see more of a 70-30. And then, you know, obviously, if your correctives a lot more, it means you're not really doing a good job of taking care of things. So again, that's just a snapshot of where we are. One thing we don't account for in either of these is projects that we do in the plant. So we're working on that, and then we're doing a lot more with the distribution sites as well. So next slide. This metric here actually shows the hours that we spend versus PM versus corrective maintenance. And so it looks a little better. That's what you want to see. You want to see your hours going towards preventative reasons, not corrective reasons. So you can see we're about 64% on our preventative maintenance. And, you know, one of the things we don't talk about, but one work order in a preventative maintenance might be like a whole basin, and that basin takes 2 weeks to complete. So that takes a lot of time. And when, you know, when you go back to that number of 380 and you divide it by 4 maintenance people, personnel, you know, you're looking at about 100 hours of each of those. But again, this just shows that we are spending our hours on preventative versus corrective. So next slide. So switching gears to laboratory now a little bit, and this is going to be, these are all like quick, because I'd love to tell you more, but we don't have time. But lead and copper, so we just finished our triennial testing. We still have a few pieces to wrap up, and then we'll be submitting our data to the state. So just so you know, BPU is required to do, technically it's 50 samples, but we do 60. We try to go above and beyond what's required. And so we did 60 samples, and we had none that were above the action levels, which is great news. But again, so it's going to all change in 2024. Likely, we will not use any of the sites that we've been sampling for years. We'll be moving away from those. I've mentioned it before, the samples that we currently sample are tier 1 sites that are classified as that lead copper time period when solder was part of, the solder had lead in it, like 1982 to 1987. So that's where these come from. So as we move forward, we'll probably be doing other samples like galvanized pipes, some unknowns. So it'll be a little bit different pool. Not sure quite what that looks like yet, but we'll be figuring that out next year. The second one down, you know, we're starting to hear more and more. Everybody wants to know about PFAS. PFAS are known as the forever chemicals. So if you've ever cooked with Teflon or Gore-Tex clothes or any of that, you've been part of the PFAS forever chemicals. So just want to say that we are getting ready to begin our UCMR 5, which that is unregulated contaminant monitoring rule. And this is something that EPA puts out. So we'll begin ours in January of 24, we'll collect 4 quarters. And we'll be looking for 29 of the PFAS synthetic chemicals and also lithium. And my guess is the lithium got added in there because of batteries. We're going to a battery world. So, but one thing that's important to note, the last time that we did the UCMR 3, that was the last time we did actually PFAS testing, and we only looked at 6 compounds. And And during that time, they were all non-detect but it was parts per billion. And it's amazing that in 2015, that's the technology that existed as parts per billion. But guess what? In 2024, it's parts per trillion. So it's amazing how finite, that piece of what they're looking for. And it'll be interesting as the rule wraps up this year and the end of the year. But we'll find out what it looks like. And then if everything goes good, then we will have met our sampling, which will be implemented in 2026. So again, I get a lot of calls, a lot of questions about PFAS, and I tell people we were non-detect in 2015, but that was at parts per billion. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. So, operations staffing.
Excuse me, can we just, and I appreciate that. I mean, obviously, after the national concerns with lead and copper, I've heard quite a bit, and I appreciate, you said the sites that you go to or where you detect that, are those a moving target? I mean, so you won't go back to the same ones, or are you able to localize, or have we been able to localize kind of where there are? Of course, the new systems don't have that have been
You
installed.
talking about lead copper?
About the lead copper, going back to that, I know you're going back, I appreciate the PFAS. And whether or
Yeah,
not
so
that-
lead copper, we use the same sites every 3 years. That's how the rule works. So you pick the sites that have, so you look for, like, say, a housing division that was built from 1982 to 1986. So we might grab somebody from that area. We might grab somebody from another area, but it has to be representative of your system. So, but we'll go back to that same homeowner because we want to build, what's important here is we have to build trust with those homeowners because a lot of people don't want to participate in this. They don't want nothing to do with you say, hey, I need to come in your house and get a sample. This is something we work with the homeowners on. There's a lot they have to do. So, but to answer your question, these are the same samples that we've been doing for quite a long period of time.
And I guess, and I appreciate that. Part of the concern is that not those new subdivisions in the 80s that were built in the 80s, but we're a 100-year-old system, a century-old system.
And that's a
And
good
so for
point, but
some
a
of
lot of
those
those
that
are
are
not
are
copper.
way back.
Or excuse me, there's less, the galvanized pipes probably are not going to present a problem. So a lot of our system that has galvanized, it's probably not going to be those areas that's a problem.
There's nothing else that leaches into galvanized, or it's not rust scales or anything that would pose any ongoing health problem.
No, so like Steve said, every system has their own plan for these copper, lead and copper samples we take. Come 2024 in October, the rule that's when the rule sets, and we have to have our inventory in. At that point, everyone will be given new marching orders on what we have to do, and we'll work on that through 25 of getting when, we're not sure when because right now we're on every 3 years to do this. So we may not have to go out, we'll go out 3 years. There's a good chance of that, especially if we don't have, the one thing we're not, we're testing these 80s because we don't have lead. If we had lead in our system, we would have to test all those houses, but we don't have lead in the system.
The reason why, and that's KDHE's rule. Okay, so we have to pick those houses because that's when the lead, they know that lead existed in solder and it breaks down into household plumbing. And that's why those houses are targeted, the 80s. So we can't just arbitrarily go out and say, oh, that house was built in 1900. We have to test it. We have to make sure that all of our sites are tier 1 sites as classified by KDHE. And so a tier 1 site is 1982 to 1987, has to fall within that, has to be a single family dwelling, not a multifamily dwelling. So.
All right, thank you. Thank you both.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, again, operators, this is a great day. We got 9 operators, been at BPU for 20 years and, it's really good. Our operating team is really good right now. We have, they're from different utilities. So everybody's got new, fresh ideas. And they're all class 4s. That's the highest level state certification. 7 of the 9 are already able to operate the plant. We've got 2 in training. Again, I mean, it's just, one of the things that we're looking at now is that operator schedule and how we get them to, being into a shift. That's our goal. And why do we do that? We're looking at some of the safety concerns. It's a big plant. They got to move around. They got to go to off sites, the active flow, collector wells. And then the plant's just getting old. I mean, we have valves that break in the middle of the night. They can't be downstairs working on a valve. Why water might need to be changed in the distribution area. So again, we've reached the goal in operators and that's really a good thing. So I'm here to, thanks for that. I really appreciate that. And I think it's going to go, be really good. Next slide. So really in summary, I say it's, taking care of the plant is a big priority. I mean, we're trusted a lot. And I feel like, we do that. We try to take care of it the best we can with the funds that are allocated to us. It's a great facility. And, as far as future things coming up, we're going to always be looking at regulation changes, PFAS, now the new one, lead copper is already kind of like behind. And then disinfection byproducts, rule, there might be some changes coming with that. So all these things, what I mentioned is they could, create a time when we have to change some of our treatment, operations to meet a new, regulation. And then lastly, I really think, right now, the water side, we've really all work closely together. There's hardly a day that we don't all collaborate. I know, Marshall's been great. His team, he's got some guys here. They visit the plant. We're actually doing some new things. We're like even Mike last week came and shadowed with our operators. So they get a little idea of what, the operators are seeing because operators are first line for our system. And then Steve's also done it, but we really, we've got a good team in the water department. So really, and same with engineering and then also environmental. Ingrid's also pretty helpful with sometimes when we got these environmental issues coming at us. So with that, I think that's it. Got any questions?
Thanks, Steve. Does any of the board members have any questions?
Steve, how many? people
Mary,
are
can
in
you
our
put your-
lab?
Excuse me?
How many people are in the lab? How many employees work? just
So we
in
have a
there?
total of 5 people in the lab.
Okay.
Right now we have 3 technicians. So we used to have a few more because we used to also assist in the power side, but we don't, with only having 1 power plant now, the power plant absorbed, the other technicians. So, we basically have 1 operator or 1 laboratory person that floats the weekends and then 2 during the week.
Okay.
Go ahead, David.
Okay, I have a question. This is the supply side and I appreciate that.
Okay.
Who do we dovetail with on the other side, on the sewer side? I've gotten some questions regarding the maintenance of the outflow. So this is, I know it's not a part of what we do. We're intake, but who do we dovetail with? A lot of concerns about the clay system.
That would
and
probably
and the
be a Steve
maintenance.
question as far as the wastewater system, Jeff Fisher.
Right, I've been getting a lot of questions. on it.
Water pollution, it's run by the city and they have a new person running the water pollution now, and that's Jeff Miles. And over Jeff is Jeff Fisher. So if you have anyone that has questions on this, just give them a call. Like I said, I can't speak to their operation
Right.
at all.
And I knew, I just kind of thought
Yeah.
to lift that up because it has been an issue. Question the other day about the other side and the maintenance of
Yeah.
the clay
Jeff
system.
Fisher would be the person that they could reach out to. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Any other board members? Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, I'll ask Jaren Petit to come up, give a overview of our electric supply side.
Bill, good evening, board. All right, Robert, let's get her rolling. So as Bill said, just gonna kind of give you a little recap of our quarter. some of the things that we've seen, some of the things that happened. I thought it'd be a good opportunity to give an update on how our CTs were used throughout the summer. And then we've got a big EMS SCADA upgrade that we're in the process of working through. So I'll give you some updates on that as well. So but as we all know, that week of August 21st, we had some pretty extreme temperatures, which for us in the utility business is always concerning from a reliability perspective. But just some nuggets from the Southwest Power Pool. So we averaged in that 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. window. That's generally the peak load across the system. We're averaging 98 degrees that week, and there were 15 to 20 hours that came in at over 100 degrees. That was just in our area. So when you think region-wide, SPP's footprint, that was pretty significant strain on the system. That Monday, there was a little over 7,800 megawatts of conventional generation that were either derated or in outage. So as SPP is kind of setting the table for the week, knowing that we're going to be in some extreme conditions, those are the things they look at. The wind forecasts were, you see about 29% of what SPP's capacity is. So a little lower than what we would see in more of the shoulder months. So obviously with the peak temperatures the way they were, the lower the wind output, the more strain there is on the traditional generators and the more need that we have for those generators. Next slide, please. We didn't have any EEAs issued that week, which was good. On Monday, they were actually anticipating it. Weather advisories, resource advisories, conservative ops throughout the week. They were closely monitoring it. One of the big factors SPP was able to import 3,000 megawatts that day from neighboring RTOs. Monday, we reached a new peak in the Southwest Power Pool, which is 5.5% higher than last year's peak. So it's a pretty significant jump. Importing the megawatts from the neighboring RTO was critical in providing the operating reserves that were needed to avoid issuing any EEAs. So that was the big thing. You see the generation mix at that time to kind of give you an idea of what's getting used across the footprint. Wind was in that 8,000 megawatt range, and you see the gas units were being heavily utilized with the price of gas being as low as it is right now. Next slide, please. So just to kind of give you some perspective on our group when the temperatures are high and kind of what our system operators are focused on. Obviously, the higher temperatures lead to higher load. We know how that works. It also lessens the efficiency of the equipment, the transmission lines, the generators. And one of the primary concerns that we monitor which is the biggest risk to our system, would be when that transmission system voltage gets lower, which in high temperatures it does. We want to try to make that system as stable as possible. Worst case scenario would be localized load reduction, shedding load, things like that. So we utilize the equipment that we have available to support that voltage, the reactive resources that help offset that declining the voltage on the transmission system. So on the 161 system, for the most part, the only reactive resources we have at our disposal for the most part is the generators. So what the system operators will do is they'll kind of set the table in the morning. They know what the temperatures are going to do. They've got a pretty good idea of what kind of load we're going to see. And they'll start manipulating the generators to help push out the VARs to help support the voltage on the transmission system. So that's something that's ongoing, and that's something that is kind of manipulated throughout the day. There was reference to capacitor banks. So on the distribution system, we do have capacitor banks, which is another reactive resource that can help support voltage when they're in service. So just an example. So we're monitoring the transmission system, and then we're also monitoring at the distribution level. So we've got equipment in the substations, the distribution substations that we're monitoring. So the circuits that would, feed a neighborhood or feed a house. We want to make sure that those circuits aren't overloaded, they're not approaching limits, and oftentimes they do. So We'll get in touch with field personnel, notify them of the potential overload. And a lot of times what we'll do is work with them to get ahead of any equipment damage or potential outages, and the line crews can switch that load from one circuit to another to kind of take the burden off of that one, and we can move some things around. So that's just kind of an example of some things we do on the distribution level when we're seeing the high load like we have been. So that pretty much wraps up the hot week, and that's something that we do throughout the year, but that week in particular was pretty stressful on the system. So we were able to get through that, not only locally, but regionally. SPP didn't have any major issues, so that was a good thing. Next slide, Robert. The other thing I wanted to touch on was our CTs, and kind of how they were utilized this summer. You may or may not remember, in May, we had a fuel nozzle replacement on CT4 that we did a budget transfer for. CT4 has been extremely valuable in the market this summer. You can see the days that it ran. It's been very reliable, and our location in SPP's footprint, there's a significant amount of load here. So a lot of the generation in this area has more of an impact. So a lot of times you'll see the generators, our generators, getting utilized maybe more so, especially the CTs, than some that may be away from some of these load pockets. There's a significant value based on location from alleviating congestion potentially, obviously serving the localized load there. So there's a lot of usage that we'll see when we work through the CTs, but CT4 has been great. And I didn't have the updated September numbers, but it's still running often. So next slide. On CT2 and 3, just a reminder, I know you're familiar with the Casper rule, but operationally, one of the things that we have to stay engaged with, we work with the environmental group and the production group and make sure that we don't want to exceed any of the environmental restrictions. So the main thing for CT2 and 3 with the low mass emitter status is during the ozone season, which is May 1 to September 31, we've got a decreased amount of hours that we can run in those, which operationally, those are the times that we would most likely need the CTs. So it's throughout the year, we're in constant communication. We're trying to balance that to ensure we don't go over, but we also want to be able to use the resource as much as possible. So you'll see when we go to the next slide, you'll see when we get through, I'll be able to talk to you about some of the things that we can do strategically to help offset that. Another question that comes up a lot of times, being in the Consolidated Balancing Authority with CT2 and 3, is what are some of the reasons that they get called on, and some of the needs that SPP sees. I talked a little bit about our location in the higher load area. So the market would be an economic dispatch. You guys are familiar with how that works. One of the primary things that the CT2 and 3 get utilized for is operating reserves. And one of the primary drivers for their value in that is they're able to be online and synced up and generating megawatts in about 15 minutes. So when the operating reserves start to get lean and SPP sees a potential issue, they have resources like that throughout their footprint where they can get those generators up and running and online to help provide those operating reserves. They have a minimum requirement of operating reserves that they have to have available at all times. So there's a lot of value in that. Talked about alleviating congestion. That's a big one, especially given our location, and something that we haven't done, but may be necessary if we needed. We talked about the reactive resources and the support for the voltage. We may actually self-schedule a CT if we're seeing some sort of low voltage and we need some more reactive resources. All of ours were pretty much online most of the time that week anyway, so we were able to utilize those for that. The runs for CT2, and it could have been any of the reasons that I listed there: 5 days in June, 7 in July, and 9 in August. Next slide. So with a couple weeks left, we've got 6 hours left of ozone hours for CT2. So we knew we were getting close and we knew we were getting through the hot months and we wanted to still be able to leverage it and also not risk our capacity requirements as far as making that unit available and being able to count that towards capacity and things like that. So one of the things we could do to hedge that is we offer the unit in reliability. So it takes economics out of it and it would only be utilized in some sort of event that would require that unit run to maintain reliability. So since we've done that to kind of hedge against those 6 hours, we're still making it available. We're fulfilling that requirement with SPP, but it hasn't been committed. So we're not going over the 6 hours, which again is that balance. We also adjusted the max runtime down to 2 hours to build in another buffer if it did get called on. We know a lot of times when it's already on, they may bump us out another hour or so. Adjusting that max runtime protected us against exceeding that 6 hour, 6 hours of ozone that we had remaining also. CT3, back in May, they had a clutch fail and there were some pretty significant supply chain issues getting that new clutch. Anyway, it came in, we were able to, the production group was able to get that installed August 28th. And it's been on that number should be 4 because it ran from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. today. And that was an operating reserve start instruction that we got on that. Lastly, the EMS upgrade. There's 3 phases to the upgrade. This is the current phase and we're nearing the end. This is where we collect all the data that we have in our SCADA system. And we essentially test the compatibility with the updated code for the new system. So it's a lot of in-house testing. GE Grid, who is doing that's the vendor that we're using on the build out. They're building out their system to be prepared for phase 2. Next slide, which will be October. We should be kicking off phase 2. We've got the testing almost wrapped up in-house, testing the data to make sure everything's compatible with the new code. Next step will be building out a test lab in our group to start migrating displays over, migrating essentially a mock-up of our old system to make sure the displays work, to make sure we're getting the data dumped in the way we need it and it's accessible. The information that we need is accessible. That'll be phase 2 and that'll be in conjunction with GE Grid. We'll be working with them to work bugs out as far as compatibility and making sure the displays come over. All new softwares have new challenges, I guess, as far as making it work with the way it was configured before. So that's phase 2. We'll start that in October. Phase 3 should be in the spring. And that's once we've got everything migrated over, we've got the test lab, we essentially have parallel systems. We're able to run in parallel. And that's where we'll start doing, we'll start building out our production environment. So the production environment is where we start testing points in the field. We'll get the relay department involved and we'll literally go through every point in every substation and make sure that we're communicating, make sure we get good data. So there's a significant chunk of time that's set aside for that to make sure that all the points are talking and we're getting all the data that we need. And then once we get to that point, it's a matter of finalizing everything with the groups at BPU to ensure that everything's accurate. And then we test our connectivity with SPP, which is the ICCP connectivity. That's how we get our information to them. And then we go live. So we're shooting for late spring, early summer of 24 for go live on the new system. And as of right now, we're on track for that. So that is it from Electric Supply. Any questions?
Board members have any questions for Jaren?
Presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jaren.
Thank you. Thank you, Jaren. Next, miscellaneous comments, I'm sure most of the board has either heard or in one way or another that the UG, I think, passed their budget the other day. There will be some changes that we would have to continue having conversation with them on some of the increasing fees and then some of the other things that comes with their new budget. So certainly now that that budget is in place, I'll be reaching out to the county administrator, continuing our conversations on how do we move forward with what's on the bill and go back and have the conversations on how we can take those charges off. So Lori, if you can come up for a second, there's also been work done on the charter ordinance in terms of the pilot. So I've got a copy of that the other day. I've read it. Lori's followed back up with them today and have more updated information than I do at this time. So Lori, you can go through
Okay.
that.
So I think the charter ordinance is going to go before the standing committee next Monday, right, Angela?
It's the next one. I'm not, yes, there was
You
not
said
one
the
this week,
25th?
so
Okay,
it should be right.
okay. So the charter ordinance, the way it's written as of now incorporates both their rebate program for utility and also the pilot exemption and the separation of the pilot between being able to do different percentages between residential and other customer classes. So that's the gist of the charter ordinance. How they see their rebate program, they're going to go ahead and take application from January until the middle of April. And then they'll go through a verification process. And in this particular one, so the rebate program will then rebate them their maximum amount by writing them a check, which it was $150. They've raised that to $200. And they've also adjusted their qualifications to meet, I think, the Homestead Act, which was the dollar amounts of instead of having two separate ones. So I think it's $37,750, I believe. So somebody would come in and they would provide verification or provide their information, and that would qualify them for the rebate program. But then it would also qualify them for the pilot exemption. So how that would feed to us then is once that is verified, they would provide us with the customers who met those qualifications. And then we have to do some system changes for us, but then we would make the change in our system to where the pilot would be zero, basically. And so those are the customers that would qualify there. So basically they're going to be giving us the list and then we would update. As far as, our systems and everything, so we'll have to make some modifications in order to meet all of the charter ordinance. So we'll have to be able to have a bucket for whatever the percentage is for commercial and industrial, whatever the percentage is for residential, which in 2024 will be the same. And then we'll need a bucket to change that pilot percentage to zero for the rebate customers. I think the other thing the charter ordinance has is they've changed the range of how to set the pilot from 5% to 12%. It was 5% to 15%. So the pilot exemption is going to run, we anticipate it running from June to May. Because their application period is through April, middle of April. And then they'll need a little bit of time to verify everything. And so we need to begin at the beginning of a cycle, a billing cycle. So we would start it in that June time period. So that's what I know now.
And I think Lori said this, but it allows, the way it was drafted allows a different pilot to be, or different rates to be set for residential versus the other.
Yep.
We got a lot more work to do.
And Lori, do you remember the number of customers that, I think somebody said that number earlier, but I can't remember.
Number of customers
That
that,
this might involve.
Eligible customers or customers that took the UG rebate program this past year?
This past year, how many was that?
522, I believe.
It was, I want to say 552, but it was 5 something too. You're right.
so if I could, we got a list from them because we were gonna start our rebate program with this first go around. It was not 500 customers. There was only like 320. We have a call with them on Tuesday to find out what the difference is. So we're working through that. We're still working to update our system so that that credit for our program will show on their bill. It'll say BPU rebate program or whatever. And we're trying to incorporate that not only for this 1 year of, that we decide to do based on the UG's list or whatever, but also however we're going to do our program in the future. So we're trying to just make one system change so we can accommodate both aspects of it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori.
But hey, Lori, the other fees, based on what you sent me the other day, the increases, line item increases, sanitary,
Oh, did you
Sewer-
already go over that?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So they're looking at increasing sewer charges, increasing trash and stormwater. We're still trying to figure
Yeah.
that out, right?
Right, so when they passed their budget last week, they had a 5% increase in their wastewater or sewer charge. And their trash fee went up from $17 to $17.94. Pilot stayed the same. And then the stormwater, they're implementing a new process to where it's based on what they call it, impervious
Impervious surface.
surface. So there's going to be a base rate, a base fee, and then, or a base customer charge, and then it'll be a certain dollar amount per 500 square feet, I think is how it is. So I would say, imagine that everybody's kind of going to be different.
That'll be part of the biggest challenge in trying to set up our system to be able to support that. In addition to all the different classifications that pilot may show up in. So this group gets this group gets that, this group gets that, so.
Seems like it'd be easier for the unified government to go ahead and build their own billing system.
Yes,
I concur.
I agree.
I agree as well.
I agree. So,
Sorry, Angie.
we're just laying out, here's the latest information that's being presented, the things we're coming up to speed on. And again, I'm certainly planning on getting back with the unified government on continuing that conversation as to when they can take over and bill for their own charges. So,
And IT's been having communications with the stormwater group over at the UG, as well as their consultant that helped them
right,
with the development of that program to identify the things that we need to do.
right.
And I think our hope is that they're gonna get the list to us that just tells us what the monthly fee is and what the cost per
The usage charge.
usage charge, yeah.
Well, and then as it relates to the pilot, I think on all of them, some good definitions, because as this come out and depending on who's billing, The question is, as long as those charges are on the bill, and one was, how are they gonna define disability? And, you know, if you have this disability, do you receive the benefit versus that one? These are all the questions we're gonna have to fill at some point, and until we can get farther down the road with separating, you know, if and when that day comes. But just for the UG to provide more clarity as to what they're doing, where they're going, and be able to help us explain what's taking place. Thank you. So that wraps up our section. I'll turn it back over to you, Madam President, for board comments.
Thank you. Senator Haley, you have any comments this evening?
Oh, back on. Thank you so much. Thank you for the update, both on the electric and the water side. I didn't get a chance to say earlier that we did have economic development and finance did have an accelerated meeting out of the blue. We weren't supposed to have met, but last Thursday did meet to consider something at the Speedway, the Kansas Speedway, to enhance another race, keep us more competitive with Iowa. And that was fast tracked to last Thursday's meeting. I think the decision was made over some discussion as to how this increases the relationship with the unified government in terms of the lease of the Speedway. And so it passed through, and whether or not we will get the ancillary benefit. My comments, though, related to this is to the last point. The bifurcation of bills really continues to greatly concern me as we discuss what the unified government's going to increase. I've gotten a call about the stormwater. I do appreciate Lori Austin visiting with me about that, how that amount, what that amount is going to be. It's going to be implemented in January. It's going to be on our charges. It's going to be on the bills. And once again, the impression will be in the general public that the BPU bill is going up. I've already heard about, as some of you had, about the rate increase when I've been out talking with some citizens, that the board did pass the rate increase for our services. It's going to be a double whammy coming with these other additional costs. And I still hope that you will continue to lobby, though I'm excited about the pilot and that bifurcated plan. The rank and file are not those 300 or 400 people that will be the beneficiaries of it. So I hope that we can continue to look at how our ratepayers are, with the UG charges, are being disproportionately impacted. Finally, got a call about deposits. I'm going to ask at some point that we look at the deposits that ongoing customers who move have to get when they get another service turned on. This isn't the first time I've heard about it. People call me up, say I'm a good service holder, but I just moved from one address to the other. And I don't know what the rhyme or reason is. Greater minds than mine do. Somebody out there knows why different people get charged a different amount of deposit when they've been customers and when they open up a new service at another location. There were some people that said they may be here tonight to discuss that, but I will want to follow up on that. And also the Clay had a concern about a particular residence that I'll share with you. They allege that the Clay line, the sewer line, has caved in, and I explained to them that that's not ours, but it caved in. It's causing the house to sink into a sinkhole. So anyway, thank you, Madam President.
You're welcome. And we will be reviewing the customer service policies in very short order. The policy committee will be. So we'll be sure to let the rest of the board know, as we always do, when those policy committee meetings are. Okay? You bet. Mr. Goneman. That was easy. Mr. Mylan.
Very briefly, I want to thank the staff for a very informative presentation tonight. As usual, you do an outstanding job to keep the public and the board informed of what you need to be all about. And hopefully that we don't have to wait 10 more years before you get some money. So I want to thank you. You've done a great job for 113 years with an old system. that Mr. Haley don't know about. But at any event, you're doing a good job on that. Keep on going. Secondly, I hope we haven't heard the sound version of that pilot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mylan. Mr. Bryant?
I just want to say thanks for the updates tonight, Jaren and Marshall and Steve. Marshall, I like the shout outs to our employees for doing their exemplary work that was noticed by the customers. And Steve, NIA PFAS is a huge thing in the industry I work in also. And we have until the end of the year to quantify that all has been removed in our feed line. So it's not something unusual, and it's very big on the coast. So anyway, thank you all very much for your updates.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Mrs. Gonzalez?
I too want to thank everybody for their presentations tonight. What I'm always amazed by every time you do a presentation is there's always a mention of teamwork or collaboration. And I really think that's very important. And I know that Nearman Water's getting old, but every time I go there, it's still a beautiful facility in my opinion. And it's so clean. I'm always amazed by all the mechanical stuff that's there and working and how clean it is around all of that stuff. And I also like to shout out to Jeanette. I've had 2 issues, I think, since the last meeting that you and Gabby have helped me solve. So I do appreciate your help all the time on those calls.
Thank you. Marshall, Steve, Jaren, thank you all for your presentations tonight. Dennis, Lori, Becky, thank you guys for your presentations to the policy committee. To be continued on at least one of those. So, but thank you guys for your patience with policy committee on that. And I don't have anything else this evening. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
This is Jeff, move to adjourn.
Mr. Mile, make a second.
Motion to adjourn has been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Mylan,
Aye.
Mulvaney Henry,
Aye.
Bryant,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Groneman,
Aye.
Haley.
Aye.
That motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.